Presented. Mustafa, what did you make of the discussion about free speech, which was very much a central part of Ted Cruz's campaign?
I mean, I find it quite interesting that in the Conservative Party that's held up as such a strong principle upon which they deliver their speeches and they deliver their messages, when at the same time they like to shout down and silence voices that may challenge them. But, I mean, at the end of the day, Ted Cruz was playing a strategic game. He was looking to build momentum towards the next campaign, arguably, and there's a lot of voices out there that are saying that that was his goal. So he just essentially went back to basics with it. But I find it kind of hypocritical of people, especially from the Republican Party, to speak about free speech when at the same time, a lot of the times, platforms for people that would challenge some of their more outlandish views are often denied. And they often base their entire campaigns on xenophobia and racism. So free speech for me has to be a balance between both sides of the debate.
Well, how do you see that playing out here? I mean, we're all so fascinated by this campaign, and we know that it has global ramifications. What do you think Trump's success, even just to date, irrespective of what happens in November, means for the Australian debate surrounding, say, Muslim immigration, free speech?
I mean, to be honest with you, from a personal perspective and from a community perspective, it's quite scary. I have to be straight. It's quite scary to see the unbelievable success he's had at riling people's emotions and playing on people's fear. And we've had a national conversation on fear past couple of days about whether or not that is a justification for certain people's opinions. But what we're seeing now is an entire campaign for presidency built on fear and its power reverberating around the entire American nation. So it's quite... it is quite scary from a Muslim perspective to watch just how, I mean, them calling out Cruz and booing him at the convention, just the numbers, it's horrifying in some sense. The success that he's had and all the people that are there shouting for him to be brought on and shouting for his success, and especially considering the hate upon which he's built his campaign, I must say it's quite frightening. From an Australian perspective, I mean, we have seen growing voices, and we saw Pauline Hanson on Q&A earlier this week, that have found electoral success on the same platform. But I hope that a lot of the Australian community, a lot of the Australian electorate can rise above some of the rhetoric Donald has used.
And we do actually...
If I could just on that note, although I completely agree with you, and oftentimes there are different minority communities that also suffer from low socioeconomic status, I don't believe that that should act as a justification for some of the policies or some of the hatred that's spewed out. When Sonia, and I know that you didn't say that, but I'm in general referencing it, because although Sonia came out and she said that we should stop Muslim migration, and that can be, some people justified it by fear, some people said that we should react with forgiveness. However, from my perspective, those two are irrelevant to the core point of the discussion, which was A, that she put forward a essentially fascist policy, and B, that it was her privilege, it was her platform that allowed her to say something like that. Although she might not have understood what she was talking about, she still said it, and she still talked about it the next day, and she still had Twitter, and she still had the platform to do so. When the discussion is brought to freedom of speech, it then becomes, oh, well, should she have said that, should she not? The discussion should be, well, what are the responses? Why is it that she continues to be able to say that, and that there are no formidable responses, that the responses are forgiveness, as opposed to calling out what it was, which was bigotry?
No, I completely agree. My point is to be
complex dynamics at work when you're talking about sexual harassment.
Mustafa.
I mean, for me, it must be a reflection on the kind of environment that they're building over there. I mean, for so long we've seen men of power come out and there's been sexual harassment cases against them. And then even when we look at the swimmer that was arrested and was given such a light sentence a couple of months ago. And the questions have to come out about how exactly do American politics and how does America shape masculine identity? Why is it that this is an ongoing problem that they seem to have? They seem to have a problem with sexism. They seem to have a problem with men being in power, abusing females around them. And Donald Trump has more than one accusation against him. There has been multiple, and there were multiple against different men of power that have come out. Bill Cosby, there were so many women that came out, and so on and so forth. So the question for me is, to what extent should they start questioning what it actually means to be a man in America?
Do you think that's going to happen?
Be able to fight it.
True,
and I think that's a major problem.
Why is it like that? Why do we have different kind of levels of equality and different levels of acceptance of these things? The reason is because it's top down. It's being the environment, the conditions, the frames of discussion has been set from the top down. It's acceptable at lower levels because it's acceptable at high levels. So when we talk about Roger Ailes, we talk about Donald Trump, we talk about all the different men of power, the importance is to hold them to account, to set the standards of discussion around identity and around the parameters of interaction between the sexes from the top down. That's what I think. It's about setting the environment to stop these incidents at every level of society.
David, you've been trying to get in. Despite the Prime Minister claiming there is overwhelming community support for a plebiscite on same-sex marriage, a new survey has found less than half of us are on board with the idea. The Galaxy poll, commissioned by gay advocacy group PFLAG, asked 1,000 Australian voters if they supported or opposed a plebiscite, regardless of their views on same-sex marriage. 48% backed the public vote, but when told Parliament could potentially override the result, support for a plebiscite fell to 33%. Only a quarter of respondents supported a plebiscite when told it would cost $160 million. Is this just a question of people being informed, or is this what's a reaction to the debate over the past few months?
Absolutely, it's a question of being informed, because when told that it's going to cost $160 million to put together, we're going to go to the polls again after a haunting campaign, and it won't even be binding. The question then becomes, why do we have it? And Bill Shorten came forward and he said, well, there's a mandate at the election, we should take it. And oftentimes polls have shown that the Australian public are for marriage equality. So then the question continues to build, why do we need a plebiscite?
More fundamentally, what share of the Australian public